Today's Farm Bureau Capital Conversation is with Representative David Hillman from Almyra, serving District 13, and as Vice Chair of the House Agriculture, Forestry, and Economic Development Committee. What does it mean to you to serve as Vice Chair of the House Ag Committee?
Everybody that knows me knows that my passion has always been agriculture. And when I was elected to the House, the reason I ran was to help agriculture. And this is my second term. Agriculture is a committee that everyone would like to be on, especially from my part of the state. And so I didn't make it on there my first term. But this time I had a little more seniority, and so I selected the Agriculture Committee. And when the Speaker asked me if I would be Vice Chairman of that committee, I was thrilled that he thought enough of my expertise and my passion to appoint me to that position. And every time I go up there and take a seat at the head table before we start a committee meeting, I thank him for doing that, and I am honored to serve in that position to better represent agriculture in the state of Arkansas.
Why was it important to you to pass a resolution encouraging trade with Cuba?
We have done this in the past. Last session we did this, the session before that. But when the president kind of put Cuba on the fast track on restoring relationship with them and trade with them, then this really became relevant to what we were trying to do. And as anybody that I can talk to knows, if we trade with Cuba, it's going to open up a major rice market for people in Arkansas. It's going to open up a major poultry market for people in Arkansas. And it just makes good sense to trade with Cuba. We can put rice on a barge at Pendleton. 2 days later, it can be down in New Orleans. 2 days later, it can be put on a lash barge, and it can be in Cuba. You know, within a week from the time that we load it on the barge, it can be on the stores in Cuba. If they buy their rice from the Far East, that takes at least 3 weeks to get there, plus the loading of the ship and the unloading of the ship. It makes good sense to Arkansas. It makes good sense to agriculture to trade with Cuba.
What is your goal with House Bill 1399?
That was a bill that was brought to me by the Division of Agriculture. And one of the things that we look for as legislators is money that doesn't have legislation to go along with it. And ever since extension experiment stations were organized nearly 100 years ago, the sale of the products from that station have gone into a pot or a pool, and that money has been used to upgrade the facilities, to buy equipment, to buy needed research items that we need. But there was never any legislation designating that to go to that particular thing. So this just puts in code in the state law what we've already been doing for 100 years. It doesn't change anything, but it kind of preserves that money for that in case someone would see that money out there and say, well, that's money I could use to build a road to my duck club or something like that, you know. So it's just putting in place what we've always been doing.
Why is it important to keep working toward a solution on scrap metal theft?
To me, this is a safety issue as well as an economic issue. In our part of the state, a lot of the scrap metal, and I'm talking mainly about steel and copper, and it's a big issue for us. For example, on a rice well, you have the starter panel, and then you have the wire going to the motor. Most of those are underground service now for safety reasons, and it's a big deal when somebody comes up and steals that copper line that goes from the starter to the motor, especially if they do it in such a way as to destroy the starter. The starter, in a lot of cases, is $3,500 to $6,000, about the same price as a motor. Well, if they just jerk those wires out of there, most of the time it destroys that panel also. So they might get $50 for the wire that goes when they go scrap it. But they destroyed this panel, could be $6,000. Sometimes they pull the wires out of the motor. That's another $6,000. So it's a big issue economically. But even more important than that is if you send your child out to start this well, and the panel, there's something wrong with the panel, and when they push that lever up and push that button, if for some reason, and it's very likely, it's not a maybe in 1,000 times, but it's more possible than not that there has been some kind of a short in that box because they have destroyed the inner workings of it. You have just put in 440 volts through that kid's thumb. And every time that happens, the potential is there to kill the guy. And I say a kid, it could be me. You know, if I went up there and I wasn't observing, I was in a hurry, got off my four-wheeler, went over there, flipped the lever up, pushed the button. So it's more than an economic issue. The economics of it are bad enough, but it's a safety issue. So that's one of the things that I've been working on the last 2 terms, and something that I hope we can stop.
What is the hardest part of your role as a state representative?
The hardest part is keeping up with all the different bills that people want me to track while I'm over here. Each one of the people that I talk to, that I contact, they will describe a bill to me with a bill number, or maybe by the sponsor's number, or you know, that bill that does this or that bill that does that, and I want you to vote for this, I want you to vote against that. And you might get 100 of those a day, especially here toward the end. And so who said what to me? So many times, if it's just verbal and you don't write it down right then, well, you know, you forget the bill number or whatever. So especially this part in the session, that's the hardest thing. Keeping up with emails takes a lot of time. I try to answer every one of them that come from my district, but just keeping track of all the bills and where they are, what committee it's in, has it passed out of the committee yet, has it gone over to the Senate yet, has it come from the Senate to the House, and we're working back and forth, and so I would say that's the hardest thing about it. But is it rewarding? Absolutely. It's a challenge, it's fun, and you feel like you're doing something for the state of Arkansas.